Welcome to Be Creative, Be Free. From the world-renowned to the neighbor next door, we feature individuals living their creative truths with the goal to inspire and educate our audience towards the creativity in themselves. So I want to welcome a world-class singer, performer, social activist, very humble social activist, may I say, and a voiceover artist, my dear friend, Jessi Keenan.
Hi, everybody.
Woo! So,
Woohoo! We're
thank
here.
you. Yes. So thank you for joining me, Jessi.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to talk to you about all kinds of things today. Can you, I gave a little intro, but can you also introduce yourself and a little bit about what you like to do creatively?
Definitely. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Jessi Keenan. I've been around for over 40 years. I'll just say that. And, you know, um, grew up in the 80s and 90s. So started as a child singer, Star Search kid. Sang for the Chicago Cubs and the San Diego Padres and did all kinds of sporting events as a kid and then as a teenager. And then when I turned 18, left Iowa, went to Hollywood, started auditioning, joined a group called the Young Americans, which is how I met Brandon. So it's just been a blessing to be accepted in the entertainment industry and doing it the grassroots way. I wasn't
Yeah.
born into it at all. I was had to audition, you know,
hmm
doing it the raw way. Yeah.
So where were you born? Where did your journey start?
Came home to a small town called Elkhart, Iowa, and that's a farm community just northeast of Des Moines. Resided in Ankeny until I was 18 years old. As a kid, the movie Annie came out right when I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So that was the first movie I remember going to see. And I remember, I think it was the song Maybe. My mom thinks it was the Tomorrow song, but I think it was the song Maybe from Annie. And after the movie, I came home and I could do it. I could sing the song right away. And after seeing the movie once, which prompted my mom to call my grandma, and my grandma was a wedding singer and she could play piano by ear.
Oh wow.
Weddings and funerals. Her and my grandfather had done like over 2,000 weddings and funerals or something here in Iowa. So I obviously got some kind of talent from her. At the age of 11, I'd sing all around Ankeny. Started in the nursing homes because my great grandmother was in a nursing home, so I'd sing for all the old people. And
Gotcha.
then I auditioned, and then Star Search came on, which was like the original American Idol for people who
Yep.
don't know what that was. There was American Bandstand, which showcased up and coming people. Then Ed McMahon's Star Search, which
So I
was
was
in the
gonna say
80s.
that was the Ed McMahon version, right?
Yep,
When from the Tonight Show, he was also on the Tonight Show. Yep.
yep, good old Ed. And so I was on there. I won one show, came back, lost the next show, but I beat the champion that ended up winning the whole thing in the end of the season. So uh, it was pretty tough competition back then.
Yeah.
But that kind of gave me a taste of LA, and I said, "Hey, mom, I'm moving to LA when I turn 18." So
Wow.
that's how that happened. Is right after high school, just came out to LA and met you, Brendan, and
Yep.
and your wife, Carolyn,
Yes. Yes.
and everybody. So
Do you remember when you were growing up? I know? I guess you said Annie was kind of a pivotal moment. I was gonna say, like, do you remember your creative, like your first kind of creative memory, or I guess if we're talking about music, I guess like, your first influences in music. You said your grandma played was musical, so it must run in the family a little bit. So did you kind of grow up around music as a kid?
yeah, my mom would play Karen Carpenter records just
Oh yeah.
constantly. She was a young mom. She was 18. Music has always been easy for me. It's
Mm,
rhyming has always been easy for me. I've been writing poems and freestyling since I was a kid.
yeah.
I love rap music. I
Yeah.
think it's the diction, it's the flow, it's the storytelling
Absolutely.
of of rap music, and a lot of people don't get that. But I was also a '90s kid, so I grew up with like the Chronic and like Two Live Crew and and all the hardcore.
Like
Not
the golden age of hip hop,
totally,
right? When the 80s
totally.
into 90s, and I totally agree. It's like it's street poetry. I mean, you can even call it street. There's all kinds of levels to it now, but
Yeah.
um, it's definitely an art form altogether. So, did you have that feeling to like create as a kid like that? Like, did you like you said, you were kind of music and you were rhyming. So did you like write a lot of your rhymes out? You know, did you have to like kind of have that need to get it out kind of thing?
Yes, yes, I did. I was constantly writing poems. I wrote a couple songs as a kid.
Mm,
Uh, I was also a busybody, so I
yeah.
wanted to do sports too.
Mm,
So it was kind of a combination of all of it. But eventually in high school, I kind of had to choose between different things because you couldn't do, show choir shows and then also be in softball towards the end there.
right.
And then I did. We were lucky in Iowa. There's a thing called the Bill Riley's Iowa State Fair Talent Search,
Mm,
and I did that every year, and it was competitive. It would help me in nervous situations. It helped me hone my talent and get
mhm.
better and better and better every year. And Bill passed away just about probably 10 years ago, maybe
Wow.
15 years ago. And he ended up, his son runs it now. But
Mm.
yeah, but they still have a talent show to this day.
Oh, that's cool.
Here in Iowa. So there was that kind of outlet, but there wasn't very many outlets in Iowa at the time. We didn't
Right.
have online, we weren't online yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was, just live shows. So unfortunately, a lot of those have gone away.
Mm.
Uh, but it's people like you and I that can bring them back
Yeah.
because, eventually people are going to get kind of tired of the impersonality, I think, sometimes of just being online and get back to doing live shows again.
It's kind of ironic that I feel like people are searching online for authenticity these days. It's like
Mhm.
that's kind of like I think that's kind of like why TikTok blew up, and people that it's like people crave not having this overproduced stuff too, which is kind of ironic that they're looking for it online instead of in person, right? It's
Right,
kind of an
right,
interesting thing, right? It's kind of
right.
strange. It's kind of a strange situation there, but growing up in Iowa, though, I would imagine, like you said, there's not maybe not too many outlets, but there's probably had time to develop your imagination and your creativity because that's one
Yes.
thing, right? Because I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like as we grew up, there was just time for our for us to do that. We weren't on screens all the time. We weren't always having our attention to of somewhere to go. So you kind of focus it on your own, and you find your own spaces and your own paths and your own ways to use your own mind. Right? Did you kind of
Well,
have that?
think about Prince, and
Mm,
he's from Minnesota, just two hours north of here,
yeah.
and it was kind of like me when my parents were fighting. I'd shut the door, lock it, and grab my stuffed animals, go in the closet, hide,
Mm,
and sing to them. And
yeah.
he would be locked in his room for several hours, days at a time, and had all these instruments, and
Mm,
it's just yeah, it's also a blessing. Like you're right.
right.
And a lot of people, it's like you want to escape where you grew up. So what can I do? What talents do I have? What do I have that's raw? That
Hmm.
it can't be bought because nobody really had money back then,
Hmm.
and it's and so I think that sort of drove me as well,
Yeah.
and it keeps driving me. When I arrived in Los Angeles, it was like being a little fish in a big pond.
Was there a bit of a culture shock coming to LA and then being like, whoa,
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what
Because I
was
used to go.
what was that like? Yeah, what was that like when you first came to LA, like first came to California, and you were like, oh, okay, this is what it is.
It was crazy because talk about culture shock. We didn't have a single Mexican, or maybe we had like three black people in my whole hometown,
Hmm.
and LGBTQ. It was still
Hmm.
hush hush back then.
Yeah.
Like you didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And and so when I first came to LA, I've always been a loving, open person
Hmm.
that accepts everybody.
Hmm.
I don't know how I got that way, but well, my mom, she's a really awesome person, but
Mm.
I remember the shock of first meeting Ruben.
Hmm.
Remember, yeah, and
Yeah.
and yeah,
All
over
right.
there, 'cause-
R.I.P. Ruben. Man,
yeah, rest in peace, man.
he was the
Uh,
best.
yeah, he was awesome. Yeah, we are the whole Castlewood community.
Hmm.
So we all lived in a place called Castlewood in the Young Americans,
Hmm.
and it was all these 18-year-olds thrown together from all over the United States. A
Hmm.
lot of them, a lot of us, just dipping our toe in entertainment for the first time. I was a little more seasoned because I'd done the Star Search thing when I was 12.
And it's got the whole like also the living together part of it, right? This is like diverse group.
Yes, four people to a two-bedroom apartment, and so yeah, that was a definitely a culture shock,
Yeah.
and then I would sneak away to audition for Disney while I was doing that. So I was doing Young Americans during the week or
Hmm.
during the weekends. I would doing small jobs. I think I worked at Cypress College part time to put food on the table. I quickly learned what the process was. You need a headshot. Back then, you need to have 16 bars of a couple songs that you're really good at, because when you go into that audition room, they're going to expect you to know these things.
Yeah.
So I figured that out really quickly. Someone saw in Backstage West that they were looking for a Shirley Temple lookalike for a movie.
Okay.
And especially then, I looked a lot younger than I was,
Sure.
18. So I got a phone call because I sent in my headshot.
Hmm.
And the director wanted to meet with me up in Hollywood. So I didn't have a car yet, took a bus up to Hollywood, met with the director, and part of the specs for the audition
Hmm.
was partial nudity. And I was not about to do that. So when I met with the director, I said, yeah, but I'm not going to get naked.
Yeah. Let's just lay it on the line right now. It's not happening.
That director turned out to be Curtis Hanson.
Oh wow.
So,
Wow.
so the yeah, so the movie was called L.A. Confidential with Kevin Spacey and Kim
Mm.
Basinger, and I
Hmm.
did get the part, and it was an awesome experience because the
Wow.
first, well, it was only a 2 day shoot for our scene,
Hmm.
but this guy took me under his wing because he got along back then. I used to smoke cigarettes, and this other guy
Hmm.
on set was smoking a cigar, so we just kind of like hit it off,
Hmm.
and he wanted me to watch his closed set scene at the end of the 2 days, and the rest of the crew was gone. Closed set means that only the camera person, the actor, and the director are allowed on set for it because it might give away a big part of the movie, which is what happened in this case. And this actor that I befriended, he's like, come watch this scene because he wanted me to see how a blood pack works.
Hmm.
Which is when you're shot in a scene, the blood pack under your shirt explodes and it makes it look like you've been shot.
Hmm.
So, come to find out, a couple years, because you don't exchange phone numbers as before cell phones.
Yeah.
That was Kevin Spacey the whole time.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, so my first time on set was kind of a really cool experience, and I had high expectations.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems like everything after that just went downhill. Because it's like you go to a movie set and you're like, where's props? Oh, they're up in the mountains, like.
Yeah. Yeah. You get on set, you think it's gonna be like glitz and glamour all over the
Mhm.
right all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to actually meet the actors as well, like a lot of the different actors, or because
Oh,
often
yeah.
often your scenes aren't shot with, to your point, like aren't shot with other actors. So did you get to kind of have some cool memories from that set?
Yeah, well, just with Kevin.
Okay.
Kim was in our scene, but I didn't hang out with her or anything. That was
Gotcha.
just a strange thing that I didn't realize it until a couple years later when I saw the movie. And then Usual Suspects came out, and I'm like, oh my God, that was Kevin Spacey. And I was right. So,
That's a great movie
but
too.
I've I met a lot of actors. I was hired by Disney to sing for their. It was called Operation Christmas, and it was a California show that was a boy and a girl, me and a guy,
Hmm.
and all the characters, and we would do that a show for all the like the homeless communities and
Hmm.
the hospitals, and so it was kind of a traveling stage show. And then I was hired by Disney to sing the part of the Little Mermaid in Orlando, Florida. And that was awesome because it was at the MGM Studios, now called Hollywood Studios.
Hmm.
They were 1 year contracts. I did two contracts. And same show, 6 times a day, live
Hmm.
stage show. I'm singing, and then it's all puppets around me. So if you've ever been to that, my backstage door was right next to the backstage door for the TV show Mortal Kombat. And
Okay.
Mortal Kombat was on TNT, starring Paolo Montalban and Kristana Loken.
Hmm.
And that's where I got to know a lot of actors
Mm.
for the first time. Because this is all this, before you become a celebrity or famous, if you happen to get that far, you do a lot of small roles. So
Hmm.
I'd meet a lot of people that just flew in from LA for the day or for the week and do their show. And so when I ended up moving back to Los Angeles, maintained friendships with a lot of those actors and
Right.
kind of got inspired to do a little bit of TV and film.
Yeah.
But I was never a straight actor. I was always singing. So I seemed to book a lot more of the singing stuff, and that's how my career led to after Disney singing for Aaron Carter. I was his backup singer
Hmm.
during his height of fame.
So do you find that like as you were kind of going from gig to gig as we get to there, that a lot of the opportunities come from just kind of making sure to like network and talk to people and kind of be open to things? Like, were they always straight auditions, or was it kind of like
No.
how did that yeah, just for like for people that are just starting out? It's probably nice
Yeah.
to hear like kind of how did you kind of go from thing to thing and find your way that way?
Well, I'm always looking for a challenge
Hmm.
and something that's going to help me grow as an artist.
Hmm.
And that's why I left Disney, was because I was doing the same show every day, 6 times a day. And as a
Hmm.
5'2" girl, there's only so many roles you can play there.
So you kind of felt like you had a point where you're like, okay, I've done this. This is I got this dialed in. I understand what this is. This is great. I
Yeah,
need to do something different and then
yeah,
expand. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll spend a couple years in between jobs. It's just how it works. I've
Hmm.
worked as a waitress. I've worked as a marketing person for online marketing when it first started getting big,
Hmm.
and usually making more money at the part-time jobs that I do,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And unfortunately, the entertainment industry has never paid in performers as they should be paid.
Yeah. That's always been the like the unfortunate inside joke of California, right? Like all the waiters and waitresses and valets and everybody, they're all actors and actresses.
Oh
Where
yeah,
where have
yeah,
you where have I seen you lately? It's like that kind of thing, right?
exactly.
It's like everybody's just trying to make it happen.
Well, and networking is a huge part of it, because as a waiter, you might get a gig from someone who just happens to be your table or whatever.
Yeah.
That's happened to me. The way that I got the Aaron Carter job was so random.
Tell me about it.
My roommate, his best friend was Joey Fatone from NSYNC. So,
Gotcha.
so,
Yeah.
and I knew this, but I'd never met Joe yet. And
Mm.
NSYNC was really popular at the time. I knew that Joey was coming into town at the time with his wife, and we were all going to go to a piano bar and sing. Well, I knew that Fatone's one of his favorite songs to do as a duet was "For Always" by Atlantic Starr, because Eric had told me that in the past. Because
Okay.
I wanted to sing it with Eric in the past. He's like, "Oh no, that's Joe's song," blah blah blah. So I'm like, okay, well then next time I see Joe, I'm singing it with him. So once I knew he was coming to town, we were going to be at a piano bar. I went and got the karaoke track "For Always," and I had it ready. And I'm like, nice to meet you. You want to sing "For Always" with me? So we did it,
Yeah.
and by coincidence, a guy by the name of Mark Giove and a friend of his were just walking by, came into the restaurant where there was the piano bar, and saw me and Fatone singing the song. He came up to me right afterwards and said, "Hey, do you want to sing backup for Aaron Carter?" And I didn't know who Aaron was at the time.
Hmm.
I was a little older than that. So I said, sure, little we that was back when I drank.
Hmm.
So I called him the next morning just to be sure, and I'm like, "Hey, were you serious last night?" I'm like, "Cause I need to like start to make plans if that's the case." And he's like, "Yeah, let me just call Jane, make sure it's okay," which was Aaron's mom and tour manager at the time.
Mm.
And 2 weeks later, I was flown to Key West, and we rehearsed in Key West for a month. So I got to hang out in Key West for a month.
Nice.
Small World, a friend of mine, Brian Friedman, happened to be the staging director.
Mm.
So my worlds were starting to collide already at that point in my career.
Yeah.
And it just made it that much more fun, because it's fun
Yeah.
to work with friends.
Of
It's,
course, that's the best. I mean, it's cool though that you had the forethought, and it's like the whole concept of like, 90 was it 90% preparation, 10% perspiration, and being prepared and thinking like, You know what? I should learn that. I should learn that duet and see what happens and be
Totally.
ready for the moment. I mean, that's a big part of it, right?
Yes.
So tell me about Key West and the whole Aaron Carter experience.
Oh my gosh. It was awesome. Well, the Carter family had lived in Marathon. Nick, Leslie, BJ, Angel, the whole clan, and they all toured with us. Bob owned
Gotcha.
a bunch of tour buses. The father, Aaron's father, and Aaron was 15. I was 25.
Right.
Uh, so they didn't know my age for like the whole first half of the tour. It was hilarious. We had 5 tour buses just for our group,
Hmm.
and they tried to put me on the dancer bus, and here I come cracking a Bud Light open on the bus, and they're like, "Oh, you can't do that. We should probably put you on the tour bus. You seem a little older than that on the band bus." So that's when
That's
I was
funny.
switched from the dancer bus to the band bus, and then it was great because you know the musicians that I met are still friends of mine to this day, and
Yeah.
Aaron always kept his same band, always all through his career up until he passed. So, the last time I got to sing with him was in 2013, and that was awesome because we hadn't seen each other in 8 years, and
Wow.
he'd happened to come through Iowa when I was in town, and so went up there to get a ticket for the show. Ran
Hmm.
into the band. They're like, "Oh my God, Aaron's gonna be so happy to see you!" So we all got to hang out for 2 days, and
That's cool.
yeah, because at that time he wasn't using his background singers anymore. So yeah.
Gotcha. That's nice. There's nothing like the bond of being on tour and doing that kind of stuff. And I know we did Young Americans together, and then like I got to do the Ill Kid tour with Adam Wesneski and other friends, and had the whole tour bus experience. And Warren K was on that tour too, and just
Wow.
uh, just going night to night and just living in. You're kind of in a different place every day, and it's wild. It's wild how you have that whole experience of, especially when you're new to it. I mean, we did Young Americans, but the whole like band, tour thing was a whole different situation,
Right.
and it was
Right.
and it was kind of wild how like we started out as like everything was like, oh wow, this is amazing, and like you just get in the grind, and then like by the end of the tour, we're like, where's our towels? Is there what's what's going on with catering? Do we have any food today? Like just because it's your world. That's like your bubble for that you live in, and you live it
You
like at
used my
night.
makeup and didn't. You used my makeup and didn't return it. That was
Yeah,
our big.
exactly. And you live in this total alternate universe of like you just live at night. I mean, we went to if I could tell you how many conversations and times we went to a Waffle House at 2, 3 in the morning. It was
Oh yeah.
traveling across the country. You know, um,
Yep.
can't but that's the stuff that you can't replace those kinds of moments and memories and stuff. So that's really cool that
Mhm.
you had that with all them. To where if he had the same band, so
Yeah. Same
it just
band.
becomes a family. You know.
Yeah, one of the dancers, Blake McGrath, went on to become a really well-known dancer, and he's still my best friend to this day.
Mm.
Um, but he's married now, living in Texas, so it's also a lonely life,
Hmm.
because once we get off tour,
Yep.
everyone spreads out again. They go back to their towns, to their families, to whatever it is. And if you live in LA, especially, you know, the last 10 years have been really lonely out there.
It's hard when you and in that bubble you have that rush all the time too that you get
Mhm.
every night. People are screaming for you or cheering for what you're doing, and then you get back to real life and you're like, no, I came back from the grocery store. No one's cheering for me. Nothing's going.
Where's the attention?
Yeah, where's the attention? There's nothing going on here. This is like so. It's hard to match that. So I hear you on the loneliness that happens too because of that. Right? There's that kind of void for that feeling. I would say too.
And that's where addiction comes in too.
Yeah.
It's for our bus alone, we had $100 a night alcohol tab.
Hmm.
So, and that, my addictions didn't start there. My addiction
Mm.
started in high school. I mean,
Yeah.
in Iowa, you're kind of born and bred on beer.
Yeah.
I'm actually 12 years alcohol free, which I'm really proud of
You should
because,
be. Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
That's hard.
But I feel like what happens to a lot of us performers is we are chasing that first adrenaline rush that we got from doing a show or having a memory. Or I
Hmm.
remember exactly when my biggest high happened, and it was the first night on tour with Aaron in
Hmm.
Nashville. And little Aaron, he was only 15 years old, but the kid, one of the best performers I think there have ever existed.
Wow.
Uh, you'd have to know him to understand this because the media never really gave him a chance
Yeah.
when he was alive. He wasn't born and bred into Beverly Hills. He
Hmm.
wasn't, it's like that song Beverly Hills, I don't belong,
Yeah.
I'm never going to reach that other level unless I take it a different direction.
Yeah.
And the first night in Nashville, I remember, everything's dark, the stage is dark, and they use flashlights to walk the backstage singers up to the platform. And Aaron's down front, right in front of the down curtain. And I'll never forget the moment. It was my first night with Aaron, and I didn't realize how popular he was at the time,
Hmm.
but he was a big Disney star.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, Aaron looks up at me from there and he gives me a wink. And I was like, oh, that was nice. My first show, uh, and then right after the wink is when the house lights went down.
Uh-huh.
And when the house lights go down, all of a sudden, with 14,000 screaming teenagers, this wall of sound hits you, literally, physically hits you like a brick.
Yeah.
And it takes your breath away. And I always think back to that moment when I see celebrities in addiction, because I think that what happens is we always are chasing that high,
Yeah.
and it's a natural high that can only happen once the first time. If you're someone
Sure.
like Fatone or, Justin Timberlake or one of the Backstreet guys, then you got it for a much longer period, you know.
Hmm.
I've talked to a couple of the guys in New Kids on the Block,
Hmm.
and saying, they went through an extremely low time for many years after
Yeah.
their fame just sort of after the all the Maurice Starr stuff and whatever.
And they were kind of designed as huge boy band, teenage, like this is your demographic. Now you're like 19, so you're old now or something. Like they're
Right.
designed to
Right.
be huge for a moment, and then there's blowback because they're so huge. There's always that part of the cycle too, for those that get that to that level. There's always an amount of blowback,
Yep.
where people get tired of you or don't, they've had enough. They need a break.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard when that's your income and that's you've got crew and all these other people uh, counting on you too to keep that going, right? And you're right, and you want to keep chasing that moment, those moments,
Yeah.
which can be hard for people that it's not always that way. Doesn't always stay that way. So
No.
yeah, you're right. I think everybody kind of goes through that on their different levels in their careers too, but it's hard to match that kind of feeling because yeah, I mean we had I just on our like mid theater level, no one was even a superstar, but we were like a baby band, and I'll never forget we were a band together for about 3 weeks or about maybe a month, because the artist had label money, so he put us all together and he's like, go get the gear you want, and I had like stacks of amps with you know so when I would hit that first chord and the curtain would open, our first show was we did some small shows in the Troubadour and the Roxy, and then to warm up, and then our
Nice.
first show was House of Blues in Chicago, sold out, um,
Oh,
and we were the first opening band. We were the baby band, but still
what
huge
was your band
crowd.
called?
It was a solo artist named Ill Kid, who
Okay.
you might have seen him in circles with various get-togethers over the years. His real name's Josh, but great guy, and it ended up. And what was cool about that band, to your point, was like the band was like friends of friends of friends as a band, and we were kind
Yeah.
of put together, and we had 4 weeks to rehearse everything, and we did 40 hours a week of rehearsals, which was like never a thing you do as you're doing your own developing band. He was like he had an artist. He was as an artist. He was like, all right, we can do this full time. I got a check. It was amazing, and
Great.
I'll never forget that first like just hitting that chord and the air of the amps are hitting my back with like the crowd going crazy, and it was just like, oh, this is amazing. So like,
Especially the House of Blues. That's my favorite venue. I
oh
love.
man,
The House of Blues.
It was so awesome. It was so awesome. I got to invite family that showed up, and it was just, it
Yeah.
was the coolest. And we did that kind of tours. Those tours, that tour was like a lot of that kind of level of like the House of Blues and stuff. We toured with the Cottonmouth Kings, which is basically
Okay,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like the suburban Cypress Hill kind of, I
Yes,
guess.
totally.
And
Totally. I
and
love that.
like Slightly Stupid, and we did our first shows. We got to do some shows with G Love and Special Sauce, which was
Right.
like, yeah, we got to open some college dates with them, and I was already a fan. We were all kind of fans of them anyway, and so that was really cool to be able to open with them. And they invited us on their tour bus, and they were super cool to us and super nice. And it was just really funny. Yeah, because you're like, and you're in your 20s, and you're like, all right, it's like rock star party, let's do this. And they would be like, okay, make sure to eat your greens and get your sleep because
Oh,
it's a
really?
long haul. Yeah, they, it was like there was that element of it, and then they were like, kids, for the long term, you want to make sure to take care of yourself, have your vitamins, or you're gonna die. You're gonna die out here on tour. It's like it's brutal.
That's hilarious.
So it was an amazing experience. It was very cool. We had a little taste of that, and then yeah, and then they just were like, they had spent he had the Dust Brothers produce his album, who did like Beck and the Beastie Boys and all these great people, but his
Wow.
manager was also like managing Linkin Park at the time, and that's when Linkin Park was taken off, and so
Right. That was
um,
during No Doubt too. So you had a
yeah,
lot of Orange County bands that were like coming up.
yeah, and then they had so then it is what it is. They had a shift at Sony when Tommy Mottola left, and they just decided to shelve his album and like write it off and be like, well, thanks guys, that was great. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so looking to the next thing. But that was a great learning experience. I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh, that's
I kind of checked that box, and I was like, well, I'm gonna look. I should look to do maybe something different, or can't count on it at least. And so, in my life, that's kind of where I was like looking towards. All right, maybe I'll go back to school for sound design or do something else. And
mhm.
um, but anyways, that was just that. But that was a good experience of how it kind of didn't happen anymore, and it was like, all right, this is what it's like. You can't expect it to
Mhm.
always be that way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you have any gigs that kind of like didn't work out at the time but led to opportunities later on?
I don't think it was anything that didn't work out at the time because
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that when I see it and I know I'm right for it, I really go after it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
there's friends that I met at Disney that have gone on now to, a friend of mine, his name is Philip Lawrence.
Hmm.
He's the hype man and the co-writer to the Smeezingtons, which is if anybody knows what the Smeezingtons are, that's Bruno Mars and his writing team. So
Hmm.
originally it was Ari, Phil, my friend Phil from
Hmm.
Disney, and Bruno, and now it's Bruno and Philip are still together, on tour, and so I've got to see a lot of their shows. You keep getting inspired by things like that
Yeah.
because when you see your friends doing shows, it's like, oh man, I need to get my shit together, which is what happened to me back in 2012.
Yeah.
I was just partying all the time,
Mm.
and that led to isolation,
Hmm.
which led to drinking more and all that stuff. And so I was back in Iowa trying to get sober.
Mm.
And a friend of mine from Disney, Philip, called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in Kansas City doing a show. Come see it." I'm like, "Okay, I'll come see it." I'd always seen him as a backup singer. So I went
Hmm.
down there expecting, to watch, a little show and like him backing up. And then when I saw their Bruno Mars show in 2012, and
Yeah.
that's right when I think Unorthodox Jukebox or Orthodox Jukebox came out.
Blew up.
Yeah, yeah. The arena was only half sold out, because they weren't huge yet.
Hmm.
And I just afterwards, I was like, dude, you guys are well. And then he's like, Jesse, I'm not a background singer. I co-wrote Just the Way You Are. I co-wrote all those songs, and I'm like, oh my god, you've done it.
Mm.
And literally 2 weeks later is when I quit drinking. It may have
Wow.
even been a week later, because people sometimes you just need the inspiration again. You know,
Totally.
if you're in a rut as a performer,
Hmm.
go out and see a show. Make yourself fill your calendar with everything entertainment. You'll get you'll get that juice back again, you know?
Yeah.
It's the only way I was able to stay sober for a long time. Now it's just because, you know, my health.
Yeah.
And I know that I've got a lot of cool things that are still going to happen in my life, but
Yeah.
nothing's ever going to be the same. If you know
Sure.
what, you know, it's not, yeah,
Changes.
yeah, it just changes. And so once you accept that and learn to move on and stay healthy, then other opportunities are going to come up. But like you said, you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
That's you just have to do it. Nothing is going to come to you. You can't just sit here and wait and expect the rest of the world is thinking about you because they're not. They're
Right.
thinking about themselves, and which is
Right.
something that we have to do. Otherwise, we give ourselves away.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But I like that you saw that as an opportunity to find other ways to fill that with inspiration instead of,
Mhm.
I mean, I hate to say addiction, right? But other things that aren't good for you, right?
Yeah,
And I think, and that is part of it. It's like it's not going to go away. I think that need to be inspired or that need to kind of feel good doesn't leave. It's just you have to kind of try to shift where you get that from, right? That's good for you.
right.
That and I think as you get older, I think as we get older, your priorities change into what makes you feel good too. Maybe not, but
For sure.
hopefully if we evolve, if we're like progressing, or I'll just talk about myself, if I'm progressing as a person and I'm trying to like, it changes. It's just like, oh, I get a good feeling out of that instead of what I used to when I was 21. Um,
Yeah.
you just try to get it from different places, and hopefully you're doing something positive for yourself in the meantime.
Yes. Yeah, you make success happen. It's it's not something that just shows up.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, every opportunity that you've talked about so far has been that you came prepared. You had a thought of how to come prepared, and then let's see what happens, and let's see what
Yeah.
doors could happen, right? Because you're right; they don't just fall in your lap.
And then the rejection side of it, which people talk about all the time, but rejection is I'm talking about the successes.
Yeah,
If we talked about the rejection, we'd be here for hours. You know, it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
there's a lot of that too.
When I was talking with Jason about that, and Jason Simon, and he was talking about how, a good way that he kind of looked at it was like, it was no longer like they're not rejecting you, you're just not right for this part. It's like
Right.
it's different. It's not like you suck at what you're doing, which we can take personally so easily as artists or as creative people, right? It's like, oh no, you're just not right for this, but you could be good for this.
A no is just not right now. And
Right.
I learned actually I learned a lot about sales
Yeah.
because in sales, you know, you keep calling. If they don't answer, that's not a no.
Hmm.
That's just not right now. That's just, you know, it's but a lot of people will take it as like, oh, they don't like me, or oh, you know, you start overthinking in your head and making up their mind for you already,
Yeah. Yeah.
which which you can't do that, you know. So
You're
you just
so
have to
right.
keep plugging away and never give up. I mean, don't get any stalker charges or anything like that, but
Right. But you kind of take the personal part out of it
yeah,
as much as you can, and it's hard to do that because it's something that you really, you're kind of connecting with your soul and your heart and your everything. You're trying to put your whole self into it. It can be hard to kind of separate the personal side of it, but it really
Mhm.
isn't personal. And I think we kind of get locked in those stories in our head sometimes, um, around that.
Once you get that door kicked open, my friend Philip taught me
Yeah.
stick your foot in the door. Don't let it close.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
You stick your foot in that door and you just don't let it close. So,
How did you go from performing on the stage? It's got that certain level of like, oh, this energy. How did you think about kind of transitioning into voiceover work?
well, the money was better.
Always helps.
Money was better. I've always loved editing stuff.
Hmm.
I used to do it from cassette player to cassette player back in the day.
Oh yeah,
Like
I know
you
what you're
get a
saying.
two decker, right? And
The dual deck cassette cassette
Totally.
player. Yeah.
Totally. So what had happened was I was in LA. I was newly alcohol free. Someone's like, you really should get into voiceover, and I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out how to do this. I went to the Screen Actors Guild, the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab over on Wilshire in Los Angeles, and
Hmm.
I took every single class they could offer, and it was free. It is
Mm.
free for SAG members. There's only 10 people allowed in the class. Once it's released, it fills up in like 5 minutes. So I would figure out the schedule and I'd be like, boom, I'm in. So
Hmm.
for 2, 3 years, I took every workshop. I would volunteer for the different conferences, voiceover
Hmm.
conferences, because I knew they would need volunteers. So I'd contact the company and I'd say, hey, do you guys need some help for this event? And they'd be like, sure, that's great.
Right.
And then pretty soon I'd be like head of the volunteers, or I'd be, kind of, well, what I learned from Young Americans, which is kind of helping run the show.
Yeah.
And I'm just a volunteer.
You stuck your foot in the door and you kept it in the door. Right.
Right. And I
Like you
kept it in the
said.
door. And I would follow up with people.
Hmm.
I had a couple demos made, although I did do my demos myself. Uh, and then I had someone go in and master them and, help me with that part.
Hmm.
That's not recommended by a lot of vocal coaches because a lot of people don't have those skills. But I've kind of been doing voices for a long time. I
Hmm.
sort of had kind of a leg up in that way. My sound is very unique,
Yep.
so I got picked up by an agent because I went down and I'd taken her workshop. Well, this is kind of a funny story.
Yeah.
So how I got my agent, my voiceover agent in Los Angeles,
Okay.
Vanessa Gilbert, amazing. She was Don LaFontaine's agent back in the day. She's old school, right? She's
Hmm.
just huge. So she was at TMGD at the time, which is one of the few kind of mom and pop voiceover agents, but still respectable.
Hmm.
And Ilko, actually, who was there, is the one who picked me up because a friend of mine, Todd, he had called Ilko and said, hey, you should listen to this girl. And Ilko's like, because I could hear him on the phone, Ilko's like, why? No. And he's like, Todd, he's like, Ilko, just do it. Like, because they're buddies, like, and it was
Yeah.
kind of like a cussing match.
Yeah.
And so Todd opened up that door. I went to that meeting and I was just like prepared for that meeting. I'm like, this is how I do this, and this is my audio recorder, and I can use Zoom and edit it this way. So I kind of like sold the agent. Well,
Hmm.
he picked me up. About a month goes by. I get a couple auditions and then I hear nothing. I'm like, okay, great. Another agent that's just going to pick me up and not do much, right? Because they've
Hmm.
got all these other people to think about. So instead of feeling sorry for myself, what I did was I found out who the head of the agency was. And at the time, it was Vanessa Gilbert.
Okay.
So I Googled Vanessa Gilbert, voiceover agent, and a workshop popped up that was in Orange County. Ann Ganzuga's company, she has agents and casting directors come in. So it
Mm.
went down there, cost like $100. Went down there, blew her socks off because I was so prepared. I had
Mm.
already taken all the classes at places that she's taught at. So everything was right, and she picked me up, and she's like, "All right, let's start getting you to know people." So I've been working with her ever since, and that's been 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And my first job I booked with her was Red Dead Redemption 2.
Awesome.
I play local population in that, and
Cool.
then since then I've done a lot of the big ones: Final Fantasy, Shadowverse. I play Tetra in that one.
So what is that like being a voiceover artist when you go into the booth? What is that like? What's that experience like for people that have never done that before?
Well, I would suggest to take a class, unless you've already been a recording artist, because you got to be familiar with a studio,
Hmm.
microphone technique, headphone technique, making sure you're not
Hmm.
wearing any jewelry.
Hmm.
Those microphones pick up every little sound. Knowing who you can cuss around and who you can't. If
It's
you're
a good
being
one.
directed by someone from Asia, don't cuss.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't think
you'll
it's funny. Yeah.
no, no.
So you would have the director might be in person or it might be like over a internet line or how does that
Both. Yeah,
both?
it could be either. When you're doing especially for video game, and
Hmm.
know what you're good at. Try it all,
Hmm.
but make sure you have really good demos at what you want to do, because if you get booked as an audiobook actor and you've never
Yeah.
done an audiobook, you don't know what kind of stamina that takes.
Mm,
That's hours and hours sitting in front of the microphone, being consistent, being energetic, having different characters under your belt so that you can play different characters in the book.
mm.
Each genre has its own little tricks to it.
Okay.
Commercial, narration, audiobook,
Mm-hmm.
corporate, IVR, video game, animation. In 2019, I'm the voice of the Hallmark Easter Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you ever saw that, but
I didn't see that one.
oh, dude, it's awesome. You
I
know what?
gotta
Here,
see
I'm gonna
it. Yeah. Awesome. I love it.
so this is one of my voiceover gigs. Ready? I
Yep.
love to hip hop, go hopping and a hip until I hip hip hop and I don't step. Gotta weep, I'm a bunny and I'm skipping and I'm bumping, I'm hopping, I'm a rabbity feet. I am the Easter bunny, long ears and fluffy feet. And it goes on.
I love it.
So my mom found this in Walmart. Walmart.
Amazing.
Walmart.
Amazing. Rapper's delight, but a bunny. You're a bunny, but you're
But I'm a bunny. Yeah.
talking about Easter. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I like the hip hop. And so it's just, these different kind of gigs that come up and you're like, but when I went into the studio there, the way that the lyrics were written, that person isn't a rapper or a singer. So I sort of had to make some adjustments and suggest those to him. And I used that in my audition. That's probably why I got the job. It's because I
Gotcha.
was using my own creativity
Mm-hmm.
along with my experience to be like, okay, this is going to work a lot better if we take out the word and. Now that's not true of all directors. In fact, it's not really standard to make suggestions unless you're asked, right?
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
and unless you have a good rapport with them and you worked with them before, but
Right.
most of the directors that I've worked with love the input of the actor because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it can get you work.
Yeah. Because absolutely. And at the end of the day, you want the best product. So if the actor has a reasonable notes and ideas, I think a director should be open to that too. It's the environment that you create, right?
Hmm.
In the
Yeah.
studio. I'm trying to do that too with people. When we're working with talent, because it shouldn't just be like, okay, do this more like this, more like that, more like this. You need to have that symbiotic relationship and I think
Yeah.
that gets the best out of you too, right? Because then you're in it, you're invested in it a little bit more
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I did not know about the Hallmark Bunny. Thank you
Yeah.
for.
These things are gonna like follow me around for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I got them for
Oh,
like all my friends' kids from high school, and they're like, "You have no idea. They play it constantly." I'm like, "I am so sorry." Yeah.
that is so awesome. How do you adjust yourself between performing for stage and performing for voiceover?
Well, stage is a lot more. This microphone is really sensitive
Yes.
on stage. It's most of the time there it's man,
Yeah.
it's the mics. No, it's the performer. They're
Yeah.
they're they're just not exerting enough or whatever it
Mm.
is. But voice acting is so much more intimate.
Hmm.
It's it's like when the camera picks up one little wink that
Hmm.
changes the entire movie. Sort of like at the end of The Devil Wears Prada,
Yeah.
Meryl Streep, that look she gives at the end. It's the same thing with voiceover. I feel like I've never learned more about acting itself
Hmm.
than when I've taken voiceover classes because it's just so it is. It's a lot more intimate.
Yeah.
Uh, I had to learn not to project so much.
Makes sense.
And my agent was constantly telling me 50% less.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And it was when I would think about the 50% less is when I would book
Right.
because I was always projecting, and here you don't project unless you're doing a projecting line in a video game and
Hmm.
it calls for it. In voiceover, you can do it as many times as you want, except when you're in the studio, obviously you don't have that much time. But when you're
Sure.
auditioning, I have usually 48 hours to get my auditions in, and if I don't like it, I can erase it and do it again. Theater, you're on stage.
It's true.
So,
Being able to play with less and be more minimal in everything you're doing for voiceover versus projecting out for stage.
Oh yeah, and also for voiceover, they want you to give ABC takes. So for example, if I were to say, "Hi, Brandon, how are you?"
Hmm.
Go ahead and say it three different ways. Go ahead, Brandon. Try it.
Hi, hi, Jessie. How are you? Hi, Jessie. How are you? Hi, Jessie. How are you?
There we go.
All right.
Good job.
Right, but like different inflections, right? Different.
Yeah, because every line, because when I go in to do a video game session, every line, there's going to be maybe 160 lines, and they're going to
Mm,
break them down into sections, and they'll say, okay, can you give me lines 1 through 6 ABC? Which means I'm going to do line 1, ABC, line 2, ABC, line 3. So that's 3 takes of each line.
right.
To do that quickly, there's different tricks. There's things that you can kind of pull out of your sleeve that allow your mind to take different directions quickly. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So that's the trick.
All right, and then how about if you have a character? How do you become a character?
I do research. I'll pull little ideas from familiar places.
Hmm.
Uh, from waitressing, I learn. I pick up different characters from customers.
Yeah,
Go out there and just live your life, and you're gonna find a bunch of characters to find to pull from.
yeah,
You know,
that's a good tip. Just being aware of the world, and
keep a notebook. You know?
yeah,
Stephen Tobolowsky taught me that you just got to keep a notebook because all of your crazy ideas are all going to come in use somewhere as a performer.
that makes sense. Is voiceover for video games different? Like you call them genres, so like a different genre.
Yep, there'd be different demos
Okay.
that you would have to sell yourself. I went to E3 a couple years back. E3 is a big gaming convention and technology convention. They
Hmm.
ended it sadly last year, but
I know.
yeah, it
Great.
sucks. From I think it was like the Fortnite people.
Mm.
They're like, just get a great YouTube channel. Send that to us. Put all your demos on your YouTube channel. Make visual demos, which is a lot of the animation stuff that I've done. I just piece it together and put it out there as a visual demo. And the amount of followers you have does come into play for casting now.
Interesting.
It does.
That's so interesting.
Yep, it does.
For something that's like not really forward, so to speak, if you're doing voiceover, that's really fascinating. Like that you need a
There's
following.
fans. There's fans of voiceover actors now. There didn't used to be. There's like
Right.
Tara Strong, E.G. Daily, Tess McNeil,
Wow.
Fred Tatascore. There's all these great voice actors, and they've got fans, and they get paid a lot of money to go to these Comic Cons and these little autograph signings in Kansas City, and that's
Yeah.
how a lot of people make their money
I
when they're
mean,
not.
good for them, right? I guess that's good for the industry too, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's creating an industry around people that don't necessarily get to be out front, and then but that's so fascinating to me that there's like a whole kind of fandom economy around that in itself. That's so interesting.
It's pretty cool. I haven't reached that level yet, but
Well,
but
you
I'm
will
also
after this podcast. No, I'm kidding.
right. Exactly. Straight to the top, baby.
Huge, but that's really interesting that like yeah that they even look at that as
Yeah.
as part of it. Interesting, so they can like leverage it or try to probably figure out scale of pay and all that stuff too. I'd imagine.
Yeah, yeah, it's and that's your agent's job to
Yeah.
negotiate for you. But now with voiceover, it's really a business to business industry. Go out there, find your clients. You can even go to voices.com, voices123.
Hmm.
There's different websites out there. They're big money makers for their CEOs. I'm just going to tell you that. We still aren't being paid fairly.
Yeah.
However, you are going to find jobs to get your foot in the door and to get some experience with, like, okay, have you ever done IVR, which is interactive voice recording, I think.
Hmm.
But just, start small,
Yeah.
take on some jobs. Just be careful with audiobook because what I'm noticing right now is that a lot of people are acting as in between producers. So they'll find talent for paying them pennies,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you're stuck recording an audiobook that's going to take you 2 weeks to complete, and they're paying you $100 for it.
Right.
Not
That
very, yeah.
kind of like places like Fiverr and those kind of sites,
Right.
right?
Yep. It's never horrible. It's horrible.
It's
Don't
like
do it.
it's like a race to the bottom right? It's what
Exactly.
it looks like.
Go to Diane Audio, Deyan. She's the queen
Hmm.
of audiobook production. And so there's a couple places, ACX, you're going to find some gigs there, but you're
Yeah.
going to find once you sign up with ACX, you're going to start getting phone calls from and emails from people saying, "You're great for our audiobook." Well, you work for 10 cents an hour.
Right.
So be
Yeah.
really, really aware of that, especially now.
How do you keep your voice intact then, doing all this voice work?
Because I was teaching voiceover for 4 years for
Uh
an
huh.
online company,
Hmm.
I had 150 students all at the same time for all the 4 years. I let myself be used up, and my voice was like that. So I couldn't sing for a couple years. I could barely, talk without it hurting.
Hmm.
So I had to go back, or I had to go into vocal therapy with a speech pathologist.
Wow.
And she really, really helped me get my voice back. And now it's back. So
That's good.
just take care of it.
Yeah.
You know what hurts and what doesn't. And make sure that if there's a director that's asking you to scream at the beginning of your session and you've got a 3 hour session, you could always say, is there any way to save this for the end? Because I don't know if I'm going to have a voice, by the
Right.
end of the session. And most good directors should already know that. Drink throat coat, same kind of stuff for singing.
Yeah.
There's some really mentholated things out there that you should never do before you
Hmm.
sing, but afterwards it's okay so long as you're not going to be using your voice during that time. That's like putting Bengay on your muscles and then going out and racing. There's a chance
Right.
you're going to pull a muscle, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Same thing with your voice. And when the voice pops, it's actually audio. Some producers a couple producers have told me that. Like if you pop a vocal cord, they can hear it in the mic.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Yikes. Yeah.
that just happened.
Oh
And
man.
then you're hoarse after that, and you may have to get surgery, or there's steroids out there that help you temporarily. I've
Hmm.
taken those. Some singers depend on the steroids to keep them singing every night,
Hmm.
but that shouldn't be the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no. Is there a voiceover union at all, or no? Is that
There,
completely contract?
well,
Kind of
it's the Screen Actors Guild.
Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah, they're that's why we just had those strikes a couple years ago for the to get video game fairness
Yeah.
usage, and we're still fighting for it. But there's an it's called NAVA, National Association of Voice Actors. So you can look up NAVA. There's Soundbox, the Gardner Collective, which is the group that I'm a part of in Los Angeles, and we're like a community. We go
Mm.
out, we hang out together. Now that I've moved back to Iowa recently, I don't get to see them, but I can hang out with them on Zoom and
Yeah.
and still get all the education online.
Maybe open your own region,
Yeah,
your own
that's
Iowa
that's
department.
what I'm working on. I'm working on my booth right now. I just went to Home Depot to get the supplies. So that'll be
Awesome.
my build this next week is my Iowa home studio voiceover booth.
That's awesome.
Got the microphones, just need the booth. So yeah.
So you were doing voiceover, and then you started. Like, what got you into the work that you did with the homeless here in LA?
These last 10 years that I've met a lot of people, had a lot of really cool experiences in the entertainment world, but being in LA, found myself after 2020 wanting to help people. I had driven to Washington D.C. to attend the March on Washington.
Hmm.
I loved activism. I loved fighting for things that are right. And I'm choosing my, kind of establishing my own beliefs based on real life in person experience instead of just online. So I think what drove me to it initially was loneliness,
Mm.
to be honest with you. My,
Hmm.
my own loneliness in Los Angeles at the time. I'd been teaching online every day, didn't really have a social life anymore.
Hmm.
And well, in 2017 was the Women's March,
Hmm.
and I feel like that Women's March in Los Angeles just opened up my eyes to, oh my gosh, there are things in this world that we can stand up for and fight for.
Yeah.
And I no longer felt afraid. like I did before of Hollywood, and sometimes these men that would say and do things that just were not appropriate, and it
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very secretive sort of society when it
Mm.
comes to that kind of stuff.
The power
So
dynamics.
yes,
Yeah.
and the power dynamics, and so I felt empowered.
Hmm.
In 2017 led me to 2020. And as I was going around the country to these different protests, I found myself wanting to help the people that were in need in each town.
Hmm.
So when I was in Seattle, all the homeless people had been scattered around the central part of the city, Capitol Hill, I think they call it. And I started being friends, just bringing water to people and being like, don't dehydrate, don't da da da. And so I just kept doing that, kept doing that. I'm like, well, I want to do this in my own neighborhood. So
Hmm.
living in LA, I learned and discovered so many homeless people just in my own neighborhood
Yeah.
in Van Nuys, and it became an encampment along Etna Street. So I would go out every day, and pretty soon I started thinking of everybody else more than myself.
Hmm.
And that's how I formed the Orange Cooler Project. And the
Hmm.
Orange Cooler Project,
What is that?
I would bring ice in the morning. I got 24 bags of ice for free from a local ice warehouse because the guys were awesome. And, I'd go pick up the ice in the morning, take it around to people. I'd check each tent, make sure that no one was unresponsive,
Hmm.
and it was a solo one woman journey. And
Yeah.
I ended up going down to Skid Row and became friends with Miss Stephanie Styles and Queen D and the women who were doing the same thing that I was doing but on Skid Row.
Hmm.
And I just loved doing it, and I still love helping people, but you
Yeah.
can only take so many years and so many days over and over of being around people who are in so much need.
You're giving a lot of,
You're
yeah.
giving a lot. Getting those people to trust you takes time and patience.
Right.
And I had the time. I had a job where I was teaching 4 or 5 hours a day. What do I do with the rest of my day as a busybody?
Hmm.
So that's how that happened. Yeah. The Orange Cooler Project has helped me grow as a person, and it's helped me realize a lot about the city of Los Angeles and
Yeah.
what they could be doing, but because of politics,
Yeah.
because of greed,
Yeah.
a lot of the larger nonprofits aren't making the difference that they say they're making simply
Mm.
because they don't want to get their hands dirty with the hardest cases. Instead,
Right.
they'd rather house people that are willing to say yes right away. And a lot of times that tends to be people straight out of the rehab programs
Hmm.
or straight off immigration.
Right.
So they're not housing the people from the streets that need it in a lot of cases. They're housing the people that are easiest to house.
So it becomes a profit situation versus a helping people situation.
Yes, you can go to any nonprofit. You can look up online any nonprofit and what their self salary is.
Yeah.
It will blow your mind.
Yeah. That's rough. I mean, yeah, I grew up with both parents are in the mental health field, so
Mhm.
they weren't necessarily working with homeless specifically, but people with mental health issues, and there's it's always been underfunded, first of all, but
Right.
but then you have that kind of cycle of people that end up homeless, either from mental health issues or maybe PTSD or variety of reasons. I mean, the economy can be crazy, and you're homeless. So it's always kind of it's always kind of killed me how people demonize homeless people, and
Mm.
I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's just a fear of being homeless or um, where that comes from, but it really feels like it's like they don't see them as human beings anymore,
Right.
and they're definitely human beings, and they could be anybody, and they could be you. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Don't be
You know,
afraid to go out and just talk to somebody on the street.
right?
Just try it because it might absolutely open your mind. My mom and my sister came out to visit me in California, and I took my sister to the streets, and I can tell it changed her just because she's like, oh, he's a nice guy,
Right.
you know. Yeah, he's got major addictions, refuses to go inside, fights with the cops all the time. You know, there's
Yeah.
always going to be the reason why they're out there, right?
Right. Right.
But it might not be their fault. It might be a domestic situation.
Right.
You know, they're just trying to escape the abusive, and I just ran into a lot of that with especially women.
Mm.
So I'll continue to do that. I'm just taking
Yeah.
a little break right now because I have to take care of myself.
Yeah. No, I understand. Well, you inspired me because I mean, I've had a on off kind of relationship of if I'm walking through a place and there's a homeless person by a gas station or something, and if taking the time to say, do you need anything or can I get you anything, and you have good experiences and sometimes you have bad experiences, and
Yep.
sometimes they're in the middle of addiction and they just want alcohol or something, and I always try to now make it a point to when I come across somebody like that and I have that moment, like go in and buy 2 bottles of water, offer
Mhm.
them the other bottle, like at
Right.
least give them water. Like, 'cause it's so hot, especially out here in California, it's so freaking hot. And you see these folks just suffering and you're like, the least you
Yeah.
can do is buy them a bottle of water. And sometimes they don't want, they don't want that. But I've also told them sometimes I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy alcohol, but I'll
Mhm.
buy you water. Do you want some water or do you want something with like vitamins or
And,
electrolytes or something?
and that was my thing with the Orange Cooler Project. Just give them an opportunity to drink the water. You know,
Right.
it's something they can't resell. You know, it's not something that they can manipulate. It's something that everybody needs.
Just a good thing to do that's not that hard for people to do.
Right, right, right.
And happened the other day. I was like, hey, man, I'll get you some water. And he's like, all right. And then I gave him the water and he just chugged the whole thing right away. Because you could tell he's completely
Yeah,
dehydrated.
yeah,
And so, anyways, I would just say for you in your Orange Cooler project, I would say people out there can do their own version of a mini version when they get a chance to
yeah.
help somebody with like
Yep.
that.
And it also works as a seat. And one of those orange coolers that you buy at Walmart, they're like $30 or wherever, Amazon. But I found if you just go in and get those because they are larger. And then know where your ice supply is in
Mm,
town because it's getting hot everywhere.
yeah.
And there's towns that are being blown away by tornadoes. There's towns that, like Katrina, people were fighting over water bottles. This is happening in the United States, right? So with something
Yeah.
like the Orange Cooler Project, eventually I'd like to have a vehicle that can go to towns like that with an ice supply to at least alleviate just one person's day, if not a couple hundred.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to keep that as a part of my life. Uh, the nonprofit's still going. I'm just in Iowa gonna do it from online here because now I've got a lot of people that I know already on the streets, so I can say, "Oh, this person has that resource. Go ahead and take it straight to them." Because a lot of times when you take clothes and stuff to these larger nonprofits, they sit in warehouses for sometimes months. And you don't really know where that stuff is going. So
Yeah.
if you get to someone who is actually documenting themselves on the streets without showing people's faces and making a show out of it, I can't stand when a couple of these streamers out there are literally making thousands and thousands of dollars off of them interviewing homeless people and giving them a $10 bill. It makes
Right.
me sick to my stomach. So it's not something that, and that's dangerous too,
Yeah. They're just using them, and yeah, and it feels even weird to talk about when I like give people water, but I, I feel like
Right.
I feel like that's something that everybody can do, and
Right.
that's good, and that's not for like I don't post it on. I gave someone water today, like that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I hate that too. That's the worst is
Yeah.
when they're just using them for
Yeah.
that. And is there a way that people can help or donate to the Orange Cooler Project?
Yeah. Venmo's the Orange Cooler Project.
Okay,
And you can go to orangecoolerproject.org, which is the website.
okay,
And I'm going to be updating it again with more videos and photos and the proof that what works, what doesn't. We've lost a lot of people. And so,
yeah,
I'm there's some memory stuff on there, which is bittersweet. But yeah, you can Venmo the Orange Cooler Project. that all goes into one account. I don't pay myself for this. I can't afford it.
Hmm.
So I still do voiceover from here,
Yeah.
and I've got my orange cooler project, and yeah,
No, that's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Where do you think the intersection of your arts and the love you have for that and the Orange Cooler Project cross? Like how do those cross for you?
People who don't have the opportunity to take classes in entertainment or anything like that, I'll just say, oh, I'll help you with voiceover. Um, just sort of giving back in that way.
Hmm.
I think that's where that crosses. But life is life. I'm taking a lot of these experience into actually a film was just released,
Hmm.
two films, a short film called Jessica, by Shu Zhang. She's a Cal Arts film school student.
Okay.
She's from China, and she came out. She made a movie about me helping people on the street. She called it Jessica. It's at the film festivals, I think, right now.
Awesome.
And then she made a movie called Van Nuys, which is a full feature, which was her thesis, and that literally is awesome. And it because it's a thesis at Cal Arts Film School, it's not released to the public right away.
Hmm.
So it crosses there too.
Yeah.
Entertainment sort of came to wanting to show what I do
Yeah.
in that way, and then through that they wanted to make a film just about someone who gives herself away,
Yeah.
which is what Jessica's about, and then the Van Nuys is about the people who I gave myself away to.
Yeah. No, I could see that you've got just so much compassion across the board, what you do, and passion as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you're building in Iowa?
Working on building a voiceover studio. Gonna do it here at the house in my own space. Eventually, I'd like to have an external studio and partner up with some people that were musicians that are here now. So, and
That's
if
great.
anybody wants to learn voiceover, I do teach privately. So you can reach out to me. That's at my email, which is lasinger56@gmail.com.
Reach out
And,
to Jessie because
or
she's
reach out to
awesome.
Brandon,
Yeah.
because he can always hook it up. Brandon knows everybody.
Everyone, check out everything Jessie's doing. We'll put all the links and other things. Thank you, Jessie, for being on
Thank
the
you,
show.
brother.
It's so
You're
awesome
awesome.
talking with you, and we'll have to do it again. We'll do it again.
For sure. For
All right.
sure. I'm, I'm,
Awesome.
I'm gonna I'm gonna interview you next time.
I love it. Let's do it. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.